Welcome to Season 4 of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, Wealth Advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. Today on the show, we chat with Henry Lake, talk show host at WCCO Radio in Minneapolis. Henry shares how he got started in radio, the value of having a voice as an African American in major market radio, and his focus on giving back to others. Henry, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Hey, pleasure to be here. How you been?
I've been good. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you, but why don't we get going? I like to, for everybody that we interview, I try to get a little bit of an idea of their background and where they came from. So why don't you tell me what it was like for you growing up?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from, originally from Memphis, Tennessee. That's one thing that I think people know about me now, because I've been kind of under the microscope and in the limelight the last few years. But I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, never lived there, though. So right after I was born, literally like a month or so after I was born, my mother got a teaching job with the Minneapolis public school systems. And then my father got a job as an engineer at Honeywell. So it just made sense that Minneapolis is going to be the landing spot for my parents to move to. And so I am a Minnesotan, right? I don't claim Memphis at all. I just happen to be born in a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm a lifelong Minnesotan, graduated from Minneapolis North High School, product of the Minneapolis public school system. Yeah. And I ventured off after I graduated in 1991 to Morehouse College. Okay. And Morehouse College was always my dream school. I always wanted to go there. And one of the biggest reasons why is just I think about Martin Luther King Jr. I think about people that I look up to like Spike Lee, Edwin Moses. And so all of the stellar young African-American men that went through there, I wanted to be a part of that family. So I went to Morehouse, graduated in 96 with a bachelor's in political science, which I've never really used. Right?
Like a lot of people, yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'll leave school. I'll take maybe a year or two off and then eventually go into law school and stuff like that. Never really ventured back into any graduate school or law school setting. Okay. And so, yeah, I came back home after the 96 Olympics, started working in the Minneapolis public school system. I really at that time determined how hard it is to work in a school and, really put your energy into young people. And so during the course of that, I kind of had a moment where I needed to take a step back and a break from the school thing because I was a young guy, right? I'm 22 and I'm in a high school at Southwest High School. And I got basically kids that are like, yeah, you're cool and you're giving us good advice, but you should be hanging out with us. And I'm like, I'm not your peer. And so I got out of that and I ended up doing an internship with the Minnesota Timberwolves in basketball community relations. Got a chance to work with some greats, man. Flip Saunders, his crew, do camps. Right. And then that ended up getting me into a situation where I met a guy, Darren Wolfson, who's at Channel 5 now. Yeah. And he met me and he said, man, you know everybody in the basketball industry with college basketball. Because I was doing like a newsletter and I was just doing AAU basketball with the Nike, EYBL, Howard Pulley. And he says, you ever thought about radio? And I said, no, never really crossed my mind. And he, at the time, was working at KFan. He says, hey, you should maybe do an internship. I ended up doing an internship, or I went and interviewed for an internship. And I ended up being the last intern for Chad Harbin and Dan Barrero. Yep. It just took off from there.
That's what I was curious about, getting into radio. Is it formal training or is it just trial by fire? Is it a matter of, when did you first get behind the mic?
Yeah, it's both. There are people that knew their entire lives that they wanted to be professional broadcasters and they went to school for that. Sure. I just fell into it. Like, you're at the right place at the right time and you have enough personality, you have enough awareness about things, just enough, right, to create a niche. And if people like you, then they'll take to you. And that's just kind of, I fell into it, to be honest with you. Yeah. I had no intention at all in terms of going into radio. It just, I meet a guy, I do an internship. Yeah. I guess another note is that at that time when I was doing that internship, Jesse Ventura was our morning guy at KFan. And then he runs for governor. He wins. And so then he has to leave radio. They create PA and Dubé show, which is Paul Allen, Jeff Dubé. Yep. They started utilizing me and it just went from there. So some of it was just being at the right place at the right time. So
was PA and Dubé the first time you were on the microphone, or was it the morning show with Jesse, or was it all of those?
It was actually all of them. Probably the very first time I actually talked into a mic might have been Dan Barrero's show.
Okay.
because I was literally their intern.
Okay. I always have all these questions because I listen to talk radio all the time, whether it's WCCO, a KFan, whoever it is, I'm listening, right? What is that process when you take the mic the first time and you have to fill a segment with whatever your topic is? You know, I mean, I think we could talk a little bit about preparing for a show.
You
And,
mean like now?
yeah, well, now maybe, but I'm thinking like the first time where you're like, okay, you got the next 3 hours here and however many segments that is. Was it something that you were like, yeah, I can do this. This is not a big deal. Or the first time like you had 3 hours that it was all you talking, were you like, oh man, how's this going to work out?
Well, for me, the actual show
Yeah.
situation, that didn't start until 2004 with me and Corey Cove, Sludge and Lake. So that was a night show. So I was able to still do like school stuff during the day and
Yeah.
have that job. And then at night be able to do the radio thing. And that show was a 2-hour show. So we were on from 7 until 9, which between two people and Corey just kind of doing radio and just being a geek that way all day long.
Yeah.
You don't need to do a million hours of prep. Like right now in this particular place that I'm at in my career, I could do 2 hours of radio in my sleep because you think about the clock and you think about the segments and you think about the breaks and stuff like that. I do 4 hours of radio a night. So for me to do a 1 hour show or a 2 hour show is like nothing. You know, I mean, that's less than 10 segments. So yeah, at that time, you know, between two people, it wasn't really tough. He was really good at coming up with like different bits and different games and stuff like that or whatever. And I was more like, I want to talk about why the Vikings suck.
Got it. Well, you just think that, you know, people, like if they're doing public speaking or whatever, that sometimes people just get stressed out about that. And it's just interesting. And I'm sure just over time, you just have a clock and in your head almost in expressing ideas and all that kind of stuff where it just isn't as big of a deal.
Yeah, no, there's still nerves depending on who the guest is, what the topic is, because we're living in a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So talking about people losing their lives due to COVID, those type of topics can make you a little bit more nervous. But for me, the only thing to me that gets a little bit nerve-wracking at times is when you're like in a situation like you're at the Minnesota State Fair, when there's thousands upon thousands of people that see you every single day and people look at you and they're like gawking and we call it zoo effect, where people are like, oh my gosh, that's that guy that talks on the radio. And I've seen him on Fox 9 and
Right.
he's talking about the Timberwolves. And I'm not a weird guy like that. Like, I'm like, hey, you know, what's up?
Yeah. How do you feel in an environment of social media and everything else where you're getting constant feedback probably of the people who agree with you or the people who don't agree with you, or if you say something, I don't know, that you didn't intend, that now it's recorded and it's transferable and it's all there. How are you with expressing opinion and ideas in light of all that and the social media feedback and the spread of information?
With me on the air, I've been lucky. I don't want to say necessarily lucky, but knock on wood,
Yeah.
I just don't, you know, when you script out your show and you have your topics of what you want to talk about,
Yeah.
just make sure that you have a really good thought and be authentic and be genuine about what you're saying. In terms
Right.
of social media, I can get a little bit riled up like everybody else out there. And there will be a lot of people that will agree with my opinion. There will be a lot of times that people will disagree with my opinion about certain things.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about from everybody, right?
Right.
Because I'm not somebody that really confines myself to, okay, I got to do this because I'm left-leaning, or I have to do this because I'm trying to poke somebody here. That's not really how I view things. I just like to look at things on topic, right? Because to me, everybody can have a great thought about something, and we can all have
Right.
terrible thoughts about certain things too. So,
Right.
you know, some of that hate on Twitter or
Yeah,
social
right.
media, everybody gets it, right? So
Yeah.
you just got to roll with it.
Yeah, I think that's great. What has been some of your favorite, one or maybe a couple of your favorite interviews that you've had, or maybe somebody that you were like, man, I was so excited, you know, whether it was an athlete or a public figure or anybody else? Was there somebody that sticks out for you?
I remember one years ago, this is probably about 15 years ago now, but 50 Cent, the hip hop artist,
Yeah.
he was promoting his new album. And he came to town here, and we met him, and we were actually in studio together. And sitting down and talking to him, man, the guy's really on top of it. Like, he's a wizard at marketing. Like, he's a genius at knowing about product placement. And there was so much that we got into that I was really, really impressed. And that, you know, the crux of it, I thought we're just going to go in, we'll talk about, you know, who he's worked with, you know,
Right,
hip hop, tracks, who your influences were and all this stuff.
Right.
And he's talking to us about different endorsement deals he's trying to line up and his thoughts on marketing his products and all of that rollout. I was like, oh my gosh, he's pretty dope.
Wow. Have you had somebody that was super difficult? I suppose most people are coming on the radio. I mean, their idea is just to be talkative and open, but
I guess sometimes political leaders can be difficult because they're trying to do the whole politician thing. They don't want to, they want to shield some things. They don't want to be always upfront about everything that's going on in the world. And so that could be kind of tough. And when you press people, sometimes they don't want to really speak to it, or they try to circle around the question. So yeah, those, and plus we're living in such politicized times right now, right? So that's kind of a gimme that's going to happen from time to time. But yeah, no, I really haven't had too many interviews go bad or south or sour, one or two, but none really stand out that much.
You mentioned you were at K-Fan for a while, and then you spent a handful of years down in Kansas City. Tell me what went on there, how that came about, and what your experience was down in Kansas City.
Yeah, so my experience in Kansas City was in 2013, I got a call from a guy who was the program director at 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. And so he had called me up and says, hey, we're making some changes here. Would love for you to interview, send a resume in if you're interested in coming to Kansas City, because we have a midday job.
Okay.
And so at that time, I was still, working in the school, Nellie Stone Johnson.
Yep.
And I was at the same time still at K-Fan, and they ended up landing on me, and so went there for 5.5 years. It was awesome. Kansas City is very much different than the Twin Cities in a couple different aspects.
Yeah, I was going to say, in what way? Yeah.
It's much smaller. It's not a big city. It's a big town, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But they've got a professional football team, baseball team, soccer, but they don't have basketball and they don't have hockey.
Right.
And so that which is a little bit of a bummer, right?
Yeah.
But they're passionate. Like, their sports fans are way more passionate.
Really? Interesting.
Way more passionate than the Minnesota sports fans. Like, if you think about K-Fan, some of the shows on K-Fan, it's not really sports. Like, it's sports, but it's like we're cracking jokes, we're doing this, we're doing all the ridiculous stuff, whatever.
For sure.
They're more hardcore sports. They're like talk Chiefs. Think about it, too. We have the University of Minnesota here, right?
Yeah.
They've got, in Kansas and Missouri, they've got K-State, KU, they've got Missouri, they've got Wichita State. It's intense there, man. It's a different beast.
I'm curious because I know what you're talking about with the sports radio in Minnesota, that most of the show veers off of sports other than like top of the hour, hey, by the way, here's what happened. Now let's talk about everything else. I'm curious if that would fly in other markets. Do you think that would fly in Kansas City, or?
Little bit. It comes down to the personality. Personalities can sell all across the country. It's just about, is somebody going to take to your personality? And luckily, me and Jay Binkley was my co-host there. We had a show where we just like to have fun. It was like 85% sports, 15% other stuff.
Yeah.
But it just kind of depends, But like, if you're good at cracking jokes and playing off of each other, it could work.
Right. In radio, is like the pinnacle, is it drive time? Is it morning? Is it or how do you think about it?
The most coveted time slots in radio tend to be evening drive and morning.
Okay.
You talk about revenue generators. I mean, those are your anchor shows, and those are the shows when people are most in the car, like, when you're heading off to work, you're listening to a show, or, when you're driving home, you're listening to a show. Right. So those are the most coveted times. To me, I just think that all of the time slots are coveted because they're massive platforms. You get on a major station like a WCCO, or you get on a major station like a K-Fan. I mean, those are big, legendary call letters. And so you got a massive platform, you have massive branding and massive marketing. And so put it like this, anybody that can be in a top 30 market and have a radio show, that's a big deal. It's almost like when people talk about the NBA or the NHL or NFL, being one of having 30 whatever jobs.
Right.
How many people can say that they're a talk show host in the Twin Cities? And this is a top 15 market.
Right. So you were in Kansas City for 5.5 years. You come back. Did you make the move to come back, or did WCCO say, hey, we would really like to have you back here? Or what? How did that go down?
Yeah, I just made the move because it was just, you can kind of sense when something's kind of run its course.
Got it.
And you miss home. And, I never really felt like Kansas City was ever going to be home. And I never really felt like I was going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. And so actually, when I first came back, I pitched to K-Fan. I said, hey, I got a concept for a show, a basketball show. Mm-hmm. And they loved it. And so we did that show, and I was doing it with Kyle Elamine and Troy Bell.
Yep.
Two guys, former college stars and then NBA basketball players. And so that was going well. And then that's when WCCO, they came to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you. It just took off from there.
All right. Well, look, we're going to take a break for a second here, but when we come back, I'd like to chat with you a little bit more. I think you've been doing some projects with the Timberwolves, and I'd like to ask you a little bit more about that. Hey there, this is Joe. You know me as the host of this podcast, but did you know that I'm also the co-founder and president of Moxie Wealth Management, a boutique wealth management firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota? My team and I excel at taking complex family and business planning concepts and making our financial advice easy to understand. We recognize the trust that executives and families place in our team and value our role in helping our clients be intentional with their assets. When you partner with Moxie, my team and I focus on creating a plan that encompasses your financial goals and philanthropy, while also understanding how you want your wealth to impact your family and future generations. You can trust our unique expertise to build a thoughtful yet strategic wealth and legacy plan for your future. To learn more about me and my firm, send me an email at joe@moxiewealth.com. That's joe@moxie wealth.com. I'm a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Securian Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Securian Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Moxie Wealth Management is affiliated with North Star Resource Group. We're back. I'm chatting with Henry Lake, radio host for WCCO. Henry, tell me about some of the projects you've been working on with the Timberwolves now.
Yeah, so clearly WCCO, with a radio home for Minnesota Timberwolves basketball, also the radio home for the Minnesota Twins. Everybody knows I'm the biggest Wolves fan in the state.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't think that's even questioned anymore. Monday through Friday, you catch me at all the games during the week. The home games. I don't travel it.
Yeah,
I have an option now to travel possibly later this year. Hopefully, but I'm not sure with this whole variant and how that stuff is working. We'll see how that goes.
Right.
But I'm the biggest Timberwolves fan, but at the same time, I'm not blinded by my fandom because I have to be open and honest about what I'm seeing.
Sure.
If Karl-Anthony Towns has a bad game, Karl-Anthony Towns has a bad game. If Anthony Edwards plays out of his mind and he is amazing, I'm going to enjoy it and celebrate it. Yeah. So, you got to take the good with the bad. And so for me, one of the things that's been fun this year is that I'm doing a new podcast called Life in the Pack.
Right.
And basically what's happening here is, and so the early portion of the episodes, I've been talking to people that are kind of behind the scenes. They're not on the court.
In the organization.
Yeah, it's former players.
Got it.
And then we're going to get to some of the guys that are on the court here, like Anthony Edwards or Jay McDaniels, those guys coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I've had fun having conversations with Mark Lowry and talking to A-Rod.
Great.
Talking to Latrell Sprewell. So, yeah, that podcast has been going on for the last couple of months now. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, so it's funny when you were talking about, people in Kansas City being, super fans, right? I know it's a Minnesota thing that we're kind of fans for teams as long as they're doing okay. And then, right? We totally bandwagon. And then as soon as they're not doing okay, we'll check into them next year. So when you say you are a diehard, lifelong Timberwolves fan, I think that means something extra special in a Minnesota environment.
Oh, I watch every game. Even though a team can lose and lose and lose, I'm still going to be a fan. I may be a frustrated fan, but I'm still going to be a fan. I went to my first Wild game last weekend, and it was funny because everybody in the press box is like, hold on. So, you show up to your first game of the year, actually first game since the pandemic hit, and there's an own goal, and we went in a shootout over the Capitals, and Alex Ovechkin 3-2. You need to come to the X more. Like, we need to see you more, right?
Right.
You spend all your time with the Twins and the Timberwolves, but it's just that's just my situation and who I cover and who I work for. So
Well, and now this year it's worthwhile, right? The Timberwolves seem to be for real this year, right?
they're better. They're much better. They still have a ways to go. There's some inconsistency there, but man, Anthony Edwards he's amazing to watch play. Like that kid he's the face of the franchise to me. He's the most talented player that we've ever drafted.
Really? More than KG?
Not saying that he's going to be better than Kevin Garnett, but I'm talking about like the moment that they came into the organization. KG developed his skills and kept going to other levels. But in terms of like just fresh out, no. Anthony Edwards, hands down, the most talented guy. He just got to continue to keep moving that forward.
It was interesting, though, because when he got drafted, didn't he say, something, I'm going to overstate it, but something to the effect of, I'm not really sure how crazy I am about basketball. Or was that out of context or what?
What he said that his first love was football, that he loves football. And people started talking about, well, hold on, this dude, you guys are going to take somebody first overall that loves football more than they love basketball.
Right.
You can love something more than something else. It doesn't mean you're going to be not passionate about your job.
Right.
And I think that those red flags or warning signs that people were talking about, everybody's walked it all back.
Yeah.
I called it out from the time. I said, you guys are overthinking it. The other thing people were talking about, the shooting percentage at Georgia. I said, man, I watched college basketball. Yeah. Did you guys watch what he played with? Did you see how he was being used? Did you see the type of team that he was trying to carry? I was like, you guys are overblowing this. And sure enough, he just goes out and, last night he dropped another 5 or 6 3-point shots.
Yeah. It's obvious that he's just a freakish athlete. I mean, it's just amazing at what he can do.
And his personality.
Yeah. Good for the media, right?
Great.
Well, so to change topics a little bit, I wanted to get at a little bit from your perspective, and you mentioned at the top of the show here, going to Morehouse and all of those iconic people and following in their footsteps. I'm curious, I happened to just look up in Minnesota, and it's like 6.4% of our population is African American in Minnesota. What do you think in your space, do you think your voice, or what perspective do you think it adds for the listening community around here, the fact that you're African American?
Oh, it's big. I get people all the time, man, that see me and they're like, man, we listen to you. We appreciate your voice. Yeah. You're speaking for people that typically in media don't get represented. And, it may be that percentage in terms of the state, but you got to think from a demographic perspective in the Twin Cities, it's a
probably much higher, yeah?
Yep. So, it is kind of weird when you, it's a little bit different now because we're wearing masks, right? You're wearing masks where you go. So people are like stressing. They're like looking at you like, man, is that? Yeah. I don't know who that is, right? Because you got a mask on. Right. But like in regular times, people just come up and they'll be like, hey, love the show. Love the Wolves takes, but we love the fact that you're about trying to bring people together and you're voicing your opinion about things that really, really matter. So I know the importance of it, specifically now with so much going on. Sure. And I'm okay with not everybody agreeing with every opinion that I have, because people aren't supposed to agree with everything that I say. But I say what's on my mind, whether it's about things that occurred with George Floyd and just me being really, really upset about that situation, to, on the other hand, really being supportive of law enforcement. I've sat down, I've had conversations with Chief Arredondo from Minneapolis Police Department. I've had conversations with John Harrington, Commissioner John Harrington, who's in charge of public safety for Minnesota, and been very supportive and talked about ways that we can try to rally and kind of come together and how we can have better communication. Roger New, the police chief out in Egan. So, I think the tough thing to me in this space is that people have stereotypes of what you are and what you think without listening to you and thinking that they know what you think and how you feel about things. Where a person can be like, well, Henry Lake's a black voice. He's probably anti-police. He's probably defund police. I, from day one, was like, to hell with this defund the police. We need law enforcement. Now, do we need to improve relations with law enforcement? And do we need law enforcement officials to be held accountable for what they do? Absolutely. We cannot have an occupation in our world that's supposed to protect us and they don't want to be held accountable. And the police union is having all of this power. So to me, it's all about like this topic into the next topic into the next topic. What do you actually feel about it? And try to break through all those stereotypes.
You just have such a platform, like you said, in a major market radio that I think it's a great opportunity for you. You still come in contact with kids in Minneapolis? Are you still involved with any programs with the kids? Or
I will, when called upon, I try to do as much going and giving back and mentoring and speaking to kids and classroom stuff that I can. I have to plan it out. I can't just pop in.
Yeah, right.
Somebody say, hey, can you, I can't do that anymore because I just, work and all the other things I have going on outside of work. It really consumes my time. I love and enjoy going over to the Trailhead, Theodore Wirth in Minneapolis for the Lopet Foundation. They've been very, very, I love their program. I've been somebody that supported Boulder Options. Daryl Thompson does a phenomenal job of leading the mentoring over there at Boulder Options. So, I definitely try to do as much as I can.
Yeah, that's great. Well, obviously, this is a podcast about, learning people's path to success. How would you define success?
That's a great question. I define success, at least for me in my life, in that I'm able to enjoy and find happiness in what I do. And secondly, being able to give back to others. That's my definition of being successful, is being able to do things where I'm really improving somebody else's life. People have different ideas or thoughts about what success is. And I tell them having a nice watch or having a nice vehicle or having X amount of dollars in the bank, that's not, I don't view that as being successful. There could be a struggling teacher that is, not sure if they're going to be able to get all their bills paid because we know as a profession, they're not compensated what they're worth, right? They're underpaid. It's an underpaid profession. But when I think about the teachers, and plenty of them.
That's right, yeah.
That go into their own pocketbooks, they go into their own bank accounts, and they purchase things for their children because they know and they love these kids that come from various different backgrounds and very different circumstances, some of them harsh. To me, that's a successful person, somebody that cares about somebody else and is trying to improve our community, our life.
Wow. Well, that's great, Henry. I think that's all we have time for today. I wanted to let you know I appreciate you taking the time and I appreciate the conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Henry Lake, talk show host at WCCO Radio in Minneapolis. You can learn more about Henry at audacity.com/WCCO Radio. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.